I clean Airbnbs for a living. I've been doing it for about 2 years now and have recently started my own cleaning company. I used to work for a larger management company, but had some difficulties with my boss and the way the business was run. So I quit and started managing a couple on my own. It doesn't pay too much, but I get to work on my own time, and I'm my own boss. A large majority of the Airbnbs I clean are mom and pop operations, and since they don't have the time to do it themselves, they pay me to tidy up between guests. Most of the properties are left relatively clean, but every once in a while we get shitty clients that will trash the place for a party or God knows what else. The worst I've had to do is scrub dried puke or throw away the occasional used condom, but it's worth it to be my own boss. I do most of my business through Craigslist, advertising my cleaning services to anyone in the area who may need help with their place. About a month ago, someone replied to my listing with nothing but the address of their property, the amount I could expect to be paid, and the first date it required cleaning. 237 Stillwater Road, $125, June 24th, 12 p.m. Although this may seem strange to someone new or unfamiliar with the business, it's fairly common for messages from the hosts to be this simple. It was part of the reason I enjoyed the job. I've never been a people person, so I enjoyed the simplicity of the limited interaction I had with people. I responded saying I could take the job and didn't give it a second thought. The rental looked run down from the outside, in desperate need of a paint job to replace the peeling white paint on the exterior. The rotting and curled shingles only exacerbated the weary look of the house. Nestled on the top of a steep hill, it overlooked the vast and deep Stillwater Lake, which coincidentally harbored a few of the other houses I maintained. It was one story with an unfinished basement indicated by the concrete foundation and the windows peeking just over the grass. However, the inside was a different story. The moment I stepped in, something felt off. Not wrong, exactly, just too clean. Walking through the house, I found 2 fully furnished bedrooms, a kitchen, an attached garage converted into a game room, and a couple of doors I assumed led to closets. It was as if it had not been touched in weeks. I absently noted this as strange, as the listing said that the previous occupant had left no less than 2 hours ago. Walking through the house, not a single pillow or sheet in the bedrooms looked to be disturbed. No dishes sat in the sink waiting to be scrubbed. No crumbs or dirt dotted the carpet or stained wood floor. It's not uncommon for occupants to clean up the rental in order to avoid a large cleaning fee, but I'd never seen a rental this sterile. However, I pride myself on being thorough and decided to replace the sheets as well as vacuum the floors just to be safe. Upon getting to the kitchen, I noticed a door in the corner I did not previously register. Stuck to the door was another detail I must have passed over on the initial walkthrough. A pinned note displayed a simple request, written in neat handwriting: replace salt in water softener. Through the door was a dark stairway leading into the basement. A lot of these old rentals had me do this as part of the routine. It was a menial task, but was inconvenient enough for me to often forget about, as they were usually out of the way, in basements or garages, or other places that I rarely had any reason to go to. Forgetting was generally not a big deal though, as these salt-dependent water softeners can often go weeks without being replenished. Since it was the first time I had cleaned this rental and the owner had explicitly asked for it, I decided to not take the chance that it could wait. About halfway down the stairs, I realized that the light from the open kitchen door was failing. I turned around to realize that the door was shutting and raced to the top of the steps. My initial panic was met with the realization that the door was simply on old hinges and naturally closes on its own. A cold shiver ran up my spine as I understood that both the descent and ascent would have to be made in complete darkness. I'd never been afraid of the dark, basements, or anything like that, but there was something unsettling about being alone in an unfamiliar house, one that had hosted countless strangers, owned by someone I'd only exchanged a few brief messages with. It left me more uneasy than I could ever remember feeling. Still, I told myself this was something I had to do. Making it down to the hanging chain attached to the bulb was no big deal. A swift walk down the stairs, and I could easily make it to the chain before the door fully closed. I bet that even a relaxed walk could allow me to pull it in time, but that was not something I had the nerve to test. The basement of the rental was the stereotypical Midwestern unfinished basement. Concrete floors and exposed wooden beams, it reminded me of my childhood home. I was greeted by the pungent mildew smell, the damp and suffocating odor, considerably stronger than the average basement. The singular light bulb swayed on its chain, casting strange, long shadows around the room. A negligible amount of light was filtered through the grimy windows haphazardly covered with cardboard, illuminating dust motes with their weak beams. There was old junk lining the walls of most of the basement on shelves or in boxes, undoubtedly the source of the musty smell. The water softener was tucked into one of the four corners, nestled between the washer and dryer. The salt in the water softener was completely empty. Typically, it takes about a month for a four-person family to go through the salt if it is fully filled. Either the salt hadn't been replaced in about a month if it was full to begin with, or this rental somehow uses an almost impossible amount of water. Puzzled, but eager to get out of the basement, I poured one of the salt bags stacked against the side of the water softener into the maw of the machine. As I turned to leave, I noticed a peculiarity under the stairs. A circular dark spot resembling water damage was situated between the wooden supports holding up the flight. As I approached it curiously, I realized it was not simply a black spot, but a damp and yawning opening, stretching an indiscernible distance into the foundation of the house. The jagged rim bore evidence of man-made tools, likely a primitive and homemade well due to the antiquity of the house. Whatever cavernous depths the well reached into was hidden from the light of the singular bulb. I grabbed a loose pebble from the crude concrete floor and dropped it into the mouth. I waited for the response and received none. I contemplated leaving the basement light on and calling it a day, but it was my first time cleaning this rental, and I was determined to leave no trace of my presence. Additionally, there was the possibility that the occupants would not find the light and turn it off, and the thought of having to replace the burnt-out bulb in the complete darkness made my skin crawl. I took a deep breath and tugged the chain down, plunging myself into complete darkness. As I did so, the sound of the pebble echoed back, winding tortuously and intoxicating from the black throat of the well. I still have the scar from running up the stairs. I told myself I wouldn't sprint, but as soon as I yanked the cord of the bulb, a fear I haven't felt since childhood swept over me. My mind conjured forms in the darkness behind me, fangs and nails scraping the air furiously inches away from my calves as I launched myself up the stairs, their shape changing every new step. I yelped as my foot caught on one of the steps and as my knee connected with the stairs, radiating a sharp pain out from my kneecap. I scrambled to get myself up, wincing at the sharp pain, and clambered up the remaining steps. I half expected the door to be locked when I made it to the small landing at the crest of the stairs and let out a relieved sigh as I collapsed through the door into the kitchen. The shapes in my mind evaporated at the presence of the dying summer light pouring in through the kitchen windows. I felt my face blush with the shame of the last 10 seconds, but another part of me insisted that my fear was justified. Attempting to shake this feeling off, I did my final walkthrough of the house. By now, the adrenaline had worn off, and my leg throbbed with the memory of my tumble. After I was sure everything was up to my standards, I bolted the front door, limped out to my car, and drove off. I have been cleaning this rental for just over a month now. Every time is the same. The house is immaculate when I arrive. There is a new note on the door to the basement, written in the same handwriting, but written on a different sticky note, or with slight variations in the print. The water softener is always empty, and I always dump salt to the fill line. For each bag of salt I go through, a new bag replaces the one I have used up the next time I show up. I have now ceased cleaning the rest of the rental. I exclusively replace the salt and ponder over the well. The well has become a source of morbid fascination for me. Sometimes I stare into the fissure for what seems like hours, only to return from the trance and realize barely a minute has passed. I continue to drop pebbles, waiting in almost erotic anticipation for the distant echo. A single thing varies, though. I am more terrified of the basement each time I go. The shapes are closer. Sometimes I think I feel them brush my shirt or pant leg when I run up the stairs in the dark. Maybe I do. I've started to bring a flashlight on my daily trip into the basement, but this does little to reduce the thoughts in the back of my mind. I bring it regardless, as it's better than nothing. This notion of something else being in the room with me has started to follow me throughout the house. At first, I felt it only when I was in the basement. Then, I felt it in the kitchen. Now, I feel it when I enter the house. I have cleaned it every day since the first day. Every night, the owner will contact me with the address of the rental, the amount I can expect to be paid, tomorrow's date, and the time they expect me to clean it. I have never seen anyone staying there, nor any evidence of inhabitants within the house. But the house is always clean. I have never dusted, but no dust accumulates on the untouched furniture or shelves. No indentations on the couch where someone might have recently sat. The dishes are always in the same spot, none left out in the sink for me to clean. I have never even seen a car sitting in the driveway or a light on while simply passing by. There is something off about the reviews for this rental online. It is almost as if they are AI generated. They follow a very formulaic structure, with many of them sharing many phrases like "feels like home" or "we look forward to staying again." All of them are 5 stars, and not a single one says anything critical about the property. The incessant mystery has festered in me like a wound, bringing me to yesterday's events. I stood under the light bulb, its dangling chain in my right hand, my flashlight heavy in my left. I inhaled deeply, pulled my right hand down, and plunged the room into utter darkness. My clammy hands fumbled to find the button, illuminating the well upon its location. I cautiously approached the pit, angling my flashlight down its gullet. Though apparently graded for military use, the beam from the flashlight was swallowed eagerly by the pit's ebony gloom. I waited. In the lack of visual or auditory input, the brain tends to make its own stimulus. So when I saw a faint reflection at the edge of the flashlight's reach, I thought that it was simply this phenomenon in action. The reflection continued to expand, shimmering as it grew in intensity, so much so that I was almost convinced that the flashlight's reach had somehow been extended to whatever depths the water table lay at. The reflections grew in their intensity, and with a terrifying beauty I can't begin to describe, I realized that the light cast back wasn't that of water. It was that of innumerable eyes. My blood ran cold, and I watched in detached horror as my flashlight tumbled into the inky darkness. Consciousness returned. After how long I am still not sure, I ran panicked through the darkness towards where I assumed the staircase was. I fumbled around and located the cool banister, using it to propel myself up the stairs. On the 5th step, the decaying wood gave way, robbing me of my momentum. I caught myself with the assistance of the railing, but upon attempting to pull myself up, the 2 ends of the broken board snared my right leg, tearing at the skin on my ankle. I tried to pull myself out of the stairs, which only served to push the splintered step further into my leg. Gritting my teeth and rotating my body, I felt for the cracked wood. My finger brushed a jagged edge pane shooting up my arm as a splinter slid under my fingernail. A carrion, rotting smell suffocated me. I gagged. With my left leg and my remaining strength, I kicked aside of the board with panicked fervor. The first kick only served to drive the splintered wood further into my tender flesh. I was certain that this is how it would end. The second did the same, but I could feel the rotted wood giving way. Adrenaline surged, dulling the pain into something distant and unreal. On the third, the board snapped. I was free. I clumsily pulled myself along on my stomach. Reaching the crest, I fumbled for the doorknob and threw the door open. If God is merciful, then it will someday relieve me of the horrid sight that the dying light illuminated. Scores of them lined the staircase, their imp-like bodies twisting and convulsing in an attempt to escape the soft glow of the sun. Their skin spread thin and pale over their bony bodies, revealing twisted and purple varicose veins over their ape-like bodies. The horde clawed over each other, tearing flesh from their leprous bodies and spilling their ichor in a deafening silence. They oozed and slithered down the stairwell, indeterminable in their numbers, but an amalgamation of claws, fangs, and atrophied wings. In places, skin bubbled and burst, emitting a foul and indescribable stench. As the last of the monstrosities vanished into their antediluvian crypt, they left behind only the shattered stair and the trail of blood marking my escape. Although I struggle to recall what followed, they say a good Samaritan found me. Babbling, incoherent, I was taken to a nearby hospital where I've remained ever since. Despite my insistence, the doctors claim there's no rental listing for 237 Stillwater Road, just a long-abandoned house. But I know the truth. I know what I saw. Periodically, I still hear it. The sweet, distant echo rising from the well, calling me back. I know I will return. And when I do, I will know just how deep the well goes.